This game is not Doom. Developed by Raven Software and published by id Software, we have a novel little MS-DOS game called Hexen. Aside from the visuals, this game actually plays quite differently from the original Doom series, so let's get into it. If you like to jump headfirst into old video games, I recommend you consider subscribing to my channel. I post videos like this one every single Friday, so stay tuned. Now, let's talk about Hexen. Starting up this game, you'll notice that we have 3 different options for which character you'd like to play. We have a fighter class, very quick and capable in melee range of his enemies, a cleric class, a little more balanced all around, and a mage class, stripping you of any melee combat and resorting you to a full magic loadout. The character I chose to play through Hexen with, though, was the fighter. Kicking off my journey, I really thought this game was just a Doom-like. Similar graphics, similar gameplay feel, similar level size, or so I thought at the time. It all just seemed to be falling into place as a different way to experience a Doom type of game. I couldn't have been more wrong. In my experience with Doom, the gameplay centers around the difficulty of the game more than anything. It's hard to figure out what to do and where to go when you're so busy trying to rid every level of all of its enemies after all, and that's a huge part of where the fun in the original Doom games comes from for me. In Hexen, the enemies really aren't all that. They don't normally flood you with high numbers of enemies, and when they do, it's usually in a room that has small choke points to walk on that only allow a few enemies to advance at a time. In Hexen, we have a much bigger emphasis on the exploration through the game rather than just killing things to get to the end of each level. One of the first things I realized playing through was that this was much more than just a simple sprint to the end and kill whatever's in your way type of game. They had me searching every wall for levers, buttons, items, enemies, anything to make a little bit of progress at a time. And in every little moment where I would come back to the main lobby and see one of the 3 staircases lifted out of the ground, it felt so good knowing I was slowly but surely making progress. To make my way through the first level in the game took me roughly 2 full hours, and there are 5 to explore in total here. This game really amazed me with how big a world they were able to make within the limitations they had to work with, and I enjoyed every second I spent roaming it. To get back to the combat here, even if it wasn't the most challenging combat ever, I still enjoyed it quite a lot. Throughout the levels, you'll find new weapons for whichever character you pick to play, and it's actually quite interesting how they work. You can find both blue and green mana throughout the game that will be stored in these little meters above your health count, and this amount of mana will function as the ammo you have for your new weapon. For example, with the fighter, I started by boxing every enemy I came across until I found myself a shiny and slightly magical axe. This weapon would consume a small amount of blue mana on every swing and was a little more powerful and far-reaching than my fists were. Moving even further, I would eventually find this cool hammer that required green mana in order to be used, and it turns out that it's actually a ranged weapon. This hammer can be thrown at enemies without having to pick it back up, and can be thrown as many times as I'd like, given that I have the mana to do so. Honestly, I can only imagine how differently every character must play, and at this point, I'd really like to work my way through the game with all 3 of them just to see how it goes. Hexen is extremely fun, and I had an absolute blast running through it, as it does require basically a whole memory card of its own in order to save progress on the N64. I actually haven't quite made it to the end yet, but I fully intend to, and I hope the same for you folks at home. If you are interested at all in playing Hexen for yourselves, it exists on Steam with a tiny price tag of about $5 in Canadian currency, and it's actually on sale right now until July 11th for $165. I highly recommend giving this game a shot. Anyways, that's gonna be my time for this week. I put out videos like this one every single Friday, so if you'd like to see more of them, stay tuned by clicking that subscribe button underneath the video. As for now, my name's Myloe, and I'm out.